9, 8.
You're watching Experience Comic Culture and Sales. Streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
2, 1.
Hey, everybody. So I was trying to decide if I should tell a joke for the opening or tell a story. And I think I've leaned towards telling a story. Because this is true. It really happened. And this happened, I want to say, early 2000s, like 2001, 2002, something like that. Maybe 2003. There was this show in Las Vegas that they were hyping as being the next San Diego Con. They were full of themselves. This was going to be just huge, and they called it the Extrusion. Now, I'm not sure exactly what an extrusion is supposed to be, but it turned out it means a con so bad that there are more vendors than attendees. It really was that bad. It was a horrible show. And I got lots of stories from it. But the story I want to tell tonight is a Halloween story that takes place away from the convention center. It was Halloween weekend that this show happened. And Halloween night, I was going to be in Vegas. And this was back at a time when I was doing a lot of photography. I spent probably about 10, 15 years doing glamour and model photographies. You know, this is one of the books I have out. And I had a friend of mine who was an adult film star, who had also lived in Vegas for a while when she was younger. And she decided that she was going to come out and hang out with me at the show. And then on Halloween night, she wanted us to go out and hit the town and told me I needed a costume. Well, I didn't have any time to put a costume together. This was kind of a last-minute decision. But, and this is going to, some of you may remember this, some of you may not. There was a website called pets.com. And nowadays, buying things off the internet is common. But pets.com was basically an online pet store. And they had this mascot that was a sock puppet. And it would go around asking questions, had a little microphone. Well, for some reason, they made versions of that sock puppet you could buy. And I had been in a Spencer's Gifts and came across said puppet. And I've always had a thing for puppets. I've always loved puppets. So I purchased this puppet. So as I'm going around my condo trying to figure out what I was going to do for a costume, I came across this puppet and I thought, well, there you go. I will just be the pets.com guy. And here's the puppet. So I thought, perfect, you know. So I go to Vegas and my friend is going to meet me there, Ree. And she's late. And the convention is a horrible, horrible convention. And the night comes and she shows up probably about, after the convention is closed, but it's Vegas. It's Halloween in Vegas. We can still go anywhere. So she shows up and says, I have another model friend of mine who I haven't seen in a while. She's going to hook up with us. And then 3 of us will hit the town. And I'm thinking, I'm about to hit Vegas with 2 adult film stars. This is not a bad life to have at this moment. So she pulls her costume out of her bag, and it is a criminal costume. You know, the black and white stripes. Prisoner costume. But as I'm looking at it, I'm like, you know, this says it's for little boys, right? Like age 7. She goes, yeah, it's going to be great. And she basically squeezed into this little criminal costume that just barely fit. And I put on the sock puppet and head out. And we go and meet her friend, who I believe was going by the name Passion at the time. And Passion was dressed as a cop, similar little boy's outfit. So we're traveling around Vegas, going to the Rio and a bunch of different clubs and into the different dances, the discos or whatever, the nightclubs, you know. And we get into one, and this seems to be where we're going to spend most of the evening. And 2 interesting things happen. One is a woman starts hitting on me. A lot. And what we discover is she thinks I'm actually the guy from pets.com and that I might be able to get her some acting work. So that I thought would be the funny highlight of the evening. But a little later, I'm getting into it. I'm having fun with this puppet, and I am telling jokes with the puppet. And like I said, I like puppets. I've used puppets. You guys see me with the producer Kyle puppet. Well, it turns out someone took offense to one of the jokes the puppet said. And this is going to sound like, you know, a blonde joke or something else, but it wasn't. This was a pretty big African American guy who took offense to what the puppet had said and started screaming at it, trying to pick a fight. Now I leaned in and I'm like, dude, I'm sorry. It's gonna be, let me buy you a drink and I'll make it up to you. And I swear to you, he turns to me and says, stay out of this. It's between me and him. And points to the puppet on my hand. I don't know what to say at that point. I'm stunned. I still buy him a drink. And then I take my 2 adult film stars and we get the hell out of there. Because that got really weird. But it was still a lot more fun than that horrible convention. Stay tuned for the Dan Wickline Show. Everybody, welcome to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. That story was 100% true. That's not, made up or anything. I still have the puppet somewhere in storage. Yeah, it was an interesting night 20 years ago now. So it was, and that convention was so bad. And the hilarious thing is there literally was more people were vendors at the show than actual attendees. We were at the I don't remember the name of the hotel we were in. but it was the very first one when you're coming to the strip from LA, or when you're driving into Vegas from that direction. And it was all the way in the back. So you had to like walk through the convention center and past their aquarium. I think it was a Bellagio or something to get to this convention center. So there was nobody there. There was no walking traffic or anything like that. And Tone Rodriguez had come up, and I was there with Red Eye Press. I had done my book, The Conversation, with them. And Daniel Cooney was there from Red Eye Press, and he got food poisoning. So I spent the entire Sunday running their booth for them because that's all they had. Marvel was supposed to be there, but instead it was this big booth that had inspirational posters. So they'd have a picture of a Marvel character with an inspirational saying underneath it. This was so bad. And they walked around afterwards and tried to get us to sign up for the following year before the prices would get hiked. It was a really bad show. It was probably the worst show that I've ever been to, and I've been to a couple bad ones. But hanging out with Rhea and Passion was fun. So I had that. All right, let's get to the news. I'll save the joke that I actually have for tomorrow. So we got some interesting news coming up here. We have Marvel's filing copyrights for their different shows, and because of the way they have to do it, certain information is getting gleaned off of these copyrights. And a new copyright filing for Ironheart. Remember how we were supposed to see Ironheart already? Well, the Ironheart copyright filing has finally confirmed that Sacha Baron Cohen is part of the show and now part of the MCU. Now, Cohen, who you probably know more likely as either Ali G or Borat, is going to be playing a character called Mystery Man. That's what they have him listed as. Now, there's been, and Ironheart was supposed to come out. It was announced in like October of 2022. And it's supposed to have come out like back in September, like September of this year, but it's gotten pushed. And, we know who Ironheart is, Dominic Thorne as Riri Williams. We met her in Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. So this was supposed to be the follow-up, but it seems now that they're pushing it with the idea of trying to get it a little closer to Armor Wars because they're going to be related. So I think that they should have done it sooner with the release of Wakanda, but and there's been a lot of rumors about who Cohen is going to be playing. Now, the story, now we don't have a lot of plot details, but what we can tell from what's been said and also from the copyright filing is that it's going to focus on a difference between technology and magic, with Riri Ironheart representing the technology side, and Parker Robbins, or the Hood, played by Anthony Ramos, will be the magic side. And the rumors have been, and this will make sense because of the character of the Hood, that Sacha Baron Cohen may be playing Mephisto, which we know that fans have been expecting Mephisto to show up since WandaVision. So to find, if we are going to finally get him, I think Sacha Baron Cohen has the right look for Mephisto as he's portrayed in Marvel Comics. So I like that casting, but we'll have to see how it works out if he is playing Mephisto, because in the comics, the Hood is created by Mephisto. It has the ability to tap into demonic portals and stuff. He also gets a pair of boots that allow him to walk on air or whatever. It's been a long time since I looked up that character. We did a special on him once, so it's out there. But so yeah, Sacha Baron Cohen is confirmed for the Marvel Universe. All right, let's move on. There is a lot of interesting inside information coming out right now, mainly from a big article by Variety about Warner Brothers and the end of the DCEU. Now, one of the things that has come up has to do with Jason Momoa and on Aquaman and Amber Heard. And there, of course, was the big court case about a year ago where Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, it was all over the place. And Amber Heard came out looking very poorly in the court case. A lot of people took offense to things she did. And there was a lot of trying to get information to salvage Johnny's career. And one of the things they went after was a set of therapist notes that from Amber and her therapist. Well, a couple weeks back when DC launched the trailer for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, somebody posted on Reddit those therapy notes. And it's kind of started a whole new kerfuffle. I like the word kerfuffle. Part of those notes included a section where Heard talks about how her Aquaman co-star, Jason Momoa, showed up on set drunk, dressed like Depp, and tried to get Amber Heard fired. Now, the actual notes say, Jason said he wanted me fired. Jason drunk, late on set, dressing like Johnny, has all the rings too. Now, again, this is from notes of things she said to her therapist. Validity of these events remains suspect. Now, nobody from Momoa's camp has commented, but DC themselves, the spokesperson for DC, has kind of pushed back on it, saying Jason Momoa conducted himself in a professional manner at all times on the set of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Others have chimed in, saying stuff like Jason works his ass off, likes to have a beer once in a while like everyone, but doesn't show up drunk to set. This is coming from an insider who was working on the set in London in 2021, and added that the two stars got along and were seen joking together. Said, someone else added, and he isn't dressing like Johnny Depp. He's always dressed in that bohemian style. Now, those same notes have Heard also complaining about director James Wan and saying that he was not supportive of her during the filming when the trials were going on. She claimed that he raised her voice to her, saying, I can't even post about Aquaman. Made it like, she said that he made it like it was her fault, and she said she was sorry. She was also barred from taking selfies with cast and crew members. Yeah, Amber Heard would never lie. Never. Now, coming out in this Variety story is something else which is interesting, which brings in another person from the news. It was also said that Heard was going to be fired from the franchise after the first film. The studio went as far as sending her agent a letter telling her so, claiming it was based on a lack of chemistry with Momoa. So the move was prior to the Depp case and had nothing at all to do with it. So this wasn't them trying to get rid of her because of what happened. This was all done beforehand. But the studio had planned on firing her, but stopped because at the time, Heard had a new boyfriend. Elon Musk. And Elon had one of his lawyers send a scorched earth letter to Warner Brothers threatening to burn the house down, is what they're saying, if the actress wasn't brought back for the sequel. So Warner Brothers caved and moved forward with her. But the biggest news that may come from the Variety article has to do with the uncertainty of stuff like, is Gal Gadot coming back or is she not? Is Ezra Miller coming back or are they not? So, because certain characters like John Cena and Viola Davis are coming back, but we know Henry Cavill and Ben Affleck aren't. So what is it? Well, the article talks about how James Gunn and Peter Safran have kind of been saddled with a bunch of duds, and they try to close out the DCEU. And while the first Aquaman movie was a major hit, the sequel has been testing really, really poorly, prompting a lot of recuts. Basically, they tested in the 60s, they put in a bunch of recuts, and it tested again in the 60s. So they did another reshoot, they cut and reshoots and all this other stuff. But the big thing coming out of all of this is insiders are saying this is the last remnants of the Snyderverse, and nobody really wants to take ownership of it. Now, like I said, certain characters are coming back, but what this report is saying is that none of the stars cast by Zack Snyder for Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, or Justice League, which include Ben Affleck, Henry Cavill, Gal Gadot, Ezra Miller, and Momoa, will reprise their roles in the new DC universe. So basically, characters like John Cena and Viola Davis, maybe Margot Robbie, that were cast by other people, they might come back or might not, but anybody actually cast by Zack Snyder will not be. So no Affleck, no Cavill, no Gadot, no Miller, no Momoa, no Ray Fisher. Those are all supposed to be done. Now, Momoa may come back, but just not as Aquaman. They're saying that there is a good chance that he's going to return to play Lobo, either in Superman Legacy, which is being written and directed by Gunn, or in a standalone film. So now, the one positive takeaway from all this, turmoil aside, is that the sequel might just end up working at the box office. Now, all of the other ones have been duds. Blue Beetle, The Flash, Shazam 2. And with the negative test or the low test scores, people are worried about Aquaman 2. But they were getting those kind of test scores off the first Aquaman, which led into finding the film in post-production, which they're trying to do now. And that it's following a similar trajectory as Aquaman 1. So the two films seem to be tracking about the same. And actually in early tracking, there is a strong interest in the Aquaman film on par with where it was in the first one. Also, China was one of the places where Aquaman made a lot of money, 300 million. And while there doesn't seem to be that level of audience anymore in China, the last two big films like Barbie only did like 35 million in China. So there really isn't that big of an audience over there anymore. But Aquaman's going to have a chance to get it. And maybe that will bump it up a bit so that's at least moderately successful. All right, let's move over here to the Spiderwick Chronicles, starring Joy Bryant and Christian Slater. Well, they originally were set up at Disney, and they got bumped, and they are now going to be at Roku. The These, of course, are based on the popular children's fantasy books by Tony D. Terlizzi and Holly Black. It's an 8-episode series from Paramount Television Studio and 20th Television, and will premiere on the platform in 2024. And this is probably the most ambitious thing Roku has done. Yeah, they do normally don't. Most of the stuff they do on Roku are like Quibi content, and I think they did the Weird Al movie. Now, of course, this is about a month and a half after Disney had pulled the plug on it or opted not to proceed. But this is going to be interesting because the Spider-Man Chronicles are said to be a much darker storyline than you normally see on Disney Plus. And again, this is being adapted children's fantasy books. So could be interesting. All right, and we've got one more story. And this is back to the copyright listings. And this has to do with Agatha Darkhold Diaries. And they've given us the real first idea of what this series may actually be about, because we know that it's about Agatha Harkness. And we've gotten 3 different titles. It started off as House of Harkness, then it became Coven of Chaos, which I was a bigger fan of, and now it's Darkhold Diaries. But the synopsis, there's actually a synopsis in the copyright filing, and it reads, in the first episode, we see Agatha Harkness, Catherine Hahn, finally breaking out of a spell she's been trapped in. She can't wait to go back to her old murderous ways, only to find that she is powerless. The only way forward for her is to embark on a perilous quest to get her powers back with the help of an unlikely friend or two. Now, this is really an interesting synopsis because it gives us a lot to think about. Now, we know at the end of WandaVision, Agatha was left in Westview believing she was actually Agnes, the character she the persona Agatha took on to get close to Wanda and the family. Well, that's how Wanda left her at the end of WandaVision, is believing she was Agnes and basically are trapping her that way. Well, now she's coming out of the spell, but how? Especially if she's powerless. Well, there's a good chance this is going to tie heavily into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and when Wanda seemingly dies. When she dies, the spell's broken. It seems like that's a pretty straightforward cause and effect. But why is Agatha powerless? Well, it might be because most of Agatha's powers come from having her having read the Darkhold and using magic from the Darkhold, which is now destroyed. So this all could be like just picking up right after Multiverse of Madness. Wanda destroys the book and sacrifices herself. Next thing you know, Agatha is out of the spell and we're moving forward with a new series. So I think that's pretty interesting. If that is how it works, I'm good with that. So, all right, let's go ahead. We'll take our first break, and when we come back, we will talk about Loki Season 2, Episode 1. Be right back.
To be continued. 3 little words that hold the secret to the next great story. 3 words that will thrill you, confound you, give life to new possibilities. Every variation of To Be Continued is a promise of adventure, a promise of excitement, a promise of unseen wonders and unexplored worlds. A promise that every issue you read makes you a part of a never-ending journey. And behind every page, there will be an unopened door waiting for you. This story to be continued at your local comic book shop. Visit comicshoplocator.com today.
According to a statistic that I just made up, people spend 4 hours a day changing the television channel. People who watch The Experience don't do that. Save yourself a ton of time by tuning into The Experience and enjoying our new original programming 7 days a week. And then tell your friends. Think about the money they could save on batteries in the remote alone just by tuning into The Experience. Find out more by scanning the QR code below. Did you know that every Experience show, including some exclusive content, streams on Twitch? Check it out, twitch.tv/the_EXP. Or just scan that QR code.
Welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show. We got a great lineup today. After a little bit after this will be Minute to Skim It with Miss Jen, Kyle, and Jay, who is currently the producer on our show right now. They've got a bunch of the new books coming out, ready to go and tell you what they think. And then, I'm assuming it's still going, we have a new episode of Mint Hunter tonight. See, I get these news, I find the lineup, and then sometimes things get canceled or moved. And so I'm assuming that's the lineup for tonight. So, all right. You guys catching Gen V, the new Boys series, the spinoff of the Boys? I got 2 episodes in this weekend. Lisa came down and we finally had a chance to catch up on some of the shows we hadn't watched, and she hadn't seen Only Murders in the Building, so we watched all 10 of those and watched like 2 episodes of Ahsoka, 2 episodes of Gen V, caught the final episode of Mandalorian, which she hadn't seen yet. There was something else. Well, we watched some Crime Scene Kitchen. But so we got a lot of shows. Didn't get to The Witcher season, the second half of the 3rd season. We still need to do that. Didn't get to Good Omens season 2. I'm very much looking forward to that. But it was just one of those cases we had so much to watch. Oh, and we watched part of The Continental, which was a lot slower than I expected. I will continue it, but it lost her, and like, all right, I'll come back to that. What we didn't get to watch, what I watched on my own, was Loki. Now, if you would have asked me my favorite of the Marvel series, I enjoyed Loki. Loki was a lot of fun, but it wasn't my favorite. And it wasn't my favorite not so much because, it was bad or anything like that. I really enjoyed it. It's really good. It's probably in my top 3, but I like some of the more standard comic stuff a little. Like Falcon and Winter Soldier was really good to me. Moon Knight is really good, but Loki is up there, and it gets all wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. Well, I absolutely loved the new episode. I mean, just loved everything about it. There was so many little Easter eggs and just great stuff. New characters that I thought were fantastic. there is such a Wes Anderson feel to the show that it's unlike anything else in the MCU. And I just really, really enjoyed it. Cannot wait for episode 2. And I'm a little worried about it because this is my one hesitation about the show. When you're doing time travel, you can start by getting as bizarre as you want. Do overlapping time, and this guy is here and then he's over there, and he's jumping in and out of his own timeline, and you can break all the rules. But by the time you end the series, you have to connect it all. And if you don't connect it all, then it doesn't work. And connecting all the dots usually isn't as fun as just throwing the dots out there. Mark says, Wes Anderson, I never got that while watching it. How so? Okay. For me, what the Wes Anderson stuff is a little bit of the feel of the show, the quirkiness, like the space or the suit that Mobius has to put on and walk out to the temporal loom. That just felt like a Wes Anderson type thing because it's so oversized. It's so, the fact that there's a crack and they put a piece of duct tape over it, that's just part of it. There's a moment in the elevator where they're focused on Loki and Mobius, and they're talking about the time slipping. And Loki's trying to say it's not that bad. And Mobius is trying to explain, no, it looks really bad. And as they're going back and forth, Mobius turns and goes, it looks bad, doesn't it? And suddenly there's another person in the elevator that we didn't see. And they're just standing there and they're dumbfounded from just in awe. And then, so that's a payoff. That's a Wes Anderson type payoff. But the best example has to do when they're talking to OB, Ouroboros, the new character played by Ki Hu Kwan. Anderson has this trick where he likes the dialogue to be fast and witty, very fast paced, almost like a patter song. So what he'll do is when he's cutting back and forth between two people talking, he lines them up in the exact same space in the frame. And we see this when Loki and OB are talking and Mobius and OB are talking. Because originally it starts Mobius and OB are side by side, and Mobius and Loki are side by side, and OB's on the other side. Well, as soon as Loki slips back into the past, he's now standing dead center against the desk with Obi directly across from him. So when they're flipping back and forth, their heads are exactly in the same place in the frame. So the viewer doesn't have to shift their eyes at all. It's immediately there and they can just keep going. And Mobius moves over to that spot after Loki disappears to keep the same thing going. But they acknowledge that when Loki comes back from the time slip and bumps into Mobius. So they're doing a lot of Wes Anderson style of stuff for the show. And when you have Owen Wilson, you're going to get that comparison anyway. But they're at least acknowledging that they're doing it. One of my favorite scenes in it is a throwaway scene, but they're walking the hallways towards the loom, and they're talking about the handbook. And Loki has no idea what the handbook is. And Obi just pulls one out of his pocket, talks about how he wrote it, it has everything in it, and he just throws it over his shoulder. And Loki catches it and starts looking at it. And I don't know how many times they had to do that scene to get it right, but it works so well. It's just this great little scene, you know. And this is the type of show where little things like that are just throwaway moments, but they add to the story, just like the vending machines and the posters and all that stuff. All of that stuff adds a dimension to it. But one of my favorites has to do with the word spaghettification. There's a moment where they're talking about pulling Loki out of the time stream and rescuing him. And they're talking two different times, but at one point, OB says, well, do you know about how if you get sucked into a black hole, you get turned into spaghetti? And Loki's like, no. He goes, good, the less you know about that, the better. So suddenly in our heads now, the idea that somebody can be turned into spaghetti. And we saw a little of that in Quantumania when the giant Ant-Man was trying to go and turn spiraled. And we got a little of that in Multiverse of Madness, but that was Wanda doing it to Mr. Fantastic. But if you're paying close attention, as they enter the room through the door, the doors that almost look like the Danger Room doors from X-Men, when they approach those doors, there is writing on the floor. And one of them is a caution about potential spaghettification. So they're making that a verb. Spaghettification is becoming a verb. So those are some of the neat little things they're doing. But I think the characters they brought back all the big characters, and I love that. They brought back Tom Hiddleston as Loki, of course. Sophia DiMartino as Sylvie. Owen Wilson as Mobius. Wunmi Mosaku as Hunter B-15. Eugene Cordero as Casey. All of them are back. They even bring back Hunter D-90, played by Neil Elise, and he's the one that pruned Mobius last season. You know, and Tara Strong's going to be back, and Ravonna Renslayer is going to be back. But we also get introduced to a few new characters. And of course, Ke Huy Quan is the first one, Ouroboros OB, and he is absolutely brilliant. He picks up on the I keep wanting to say a pattern song, but he picks up on the cadence that Mobius and Loki have built over season one and really gets into it. You know, so you have this dialogue going on. And again, it's very Wes Anderson style dialogue. You don't get it in any of the other stuff. You know, Loki doesn't talk like this in any of the Thor movies, but you get it here. But there's so many neat little moments with OB that I absolutely love the character. I'm in full bore with this character. Everything from it seems like he just works constantly. He never leaves that little area. You know, his last visitor was 400 years ago, and it was Mobius. Or was it Loki that he just thinks is Mobius? It's a gray area there. But the other characters they introduce are the ones you got to really pay attention to. There is Judge Gamble, played by Liz Carr. There is General Dox, played by Kate Dickie from Game of Thrones. And then there's Hunter X5, played by Rafael Casal. Now, it's interesting that we see him standing there and he's got X5 on his gloves, but when you cross him, it's like it actually says XS, like it's in excess. And General Dox it's short for Paradox. It's another TVA character from the comics. But she's sending out the hunters for basically war. She's going over the top on this response. But the character of X5 is interesting because that's the same actor who is going to play the Zaniac guy, the actor we see in all the scenes. So either we're going to learn what he was before he got pruned, and we're going to see what his life was like, or this is what he does after. So somehow he leaves the TVA. I don't know. So there's potential there. But the Zaniac is an interesting serial killer character from Marvel, and that they're trying to bring that in, again, really interesting. Also, the talk about the temporal loom, I'm starting to get the feeling that they don't go after Victor Timely because he's Kang. I'm getting the feeling they're going after Victor Timely because he's the guy that built the temporal loom, and they're having problems with it, and are going to need him. So this is all very strange, but I love the fact that it's strange, that it's absolutely unhinged, and we really don't have any answers yet, but we don't need them. It's episode 1. Set it up to be as strange as possible. Now, again, they've got to hit the landing with this series. By the end of it, it has to tie everything up. Like, who pruned Loki? Wasn't Sylvie. She was in the elevator in front of him. Who was behind him? Victor Timely? Another version of Loki? Mobius? I mean, who was there? So that's one of the things we got to find out. How many times have the TVA had their minds wiped? I mean, we know that at least at one point they all were working for Kang or He Who Remains, and then they were working for the Timekeepers because they got their minds wiped, and the Timekeepers replaced Kang, and they put up new statues and everything. So there are a lot of questions thrown out at us in episode 1. There's a bunch of stuff put into the end credit scenes, or the ending credits. And then, of course, we get an end credit scene, which we normally don't get on a first episode. But we get to see what's happened to Sylvie immediately after she killed He Who Remains. She goes to a branch timeline, Broxton, Missouri, which has always been a part of Marvel. And she ends up going to a McDonald's, and we see what the tie-in is and how, she goes in there and it looks like everything she's missed out on in her life. Plus, it's not rat or possum or doesn't have a face, the food there. So I think we'll deal with the whole McDonald's thing next episode. But the interesting thing I heard from, or doing readings on it, is that the writer did not get any kind of mandate from Marvel saying, we need to put McDonald's in the show. They're a sponsor. The writer naturally came to the idea of McDonald's being 80s McDonald's being the epitome of everything that Sylvie had missed out on, and that she would be drawn to it. He then took it to the producers and then to the corporate, and somebody from marketing went, we've already got a deal in place with McDonald's. This should be easy. Because the writer didn't think that McDonald's would go for it. He thought McDonald's would look at it and think, oh, they're having a laugh at our expense. But they already had a promotional deal with McDonald's. They were already going to do the sauces and all that stuff. and it just worked out. So don't look at it as McDonald's is wedged in there because of a promotional deal. This is what the writer wanted. So, all right, let's take one quick break, and when we come back, we'll wrap up the show. So, be right back.
You know how when you go to Comic-Con, after Comic-Con, you go to the hotel bar, and there's a whole bunch of people playing music and dancing, and you've got Pikachu and Lara Croft Tomb Raider doing the cha-cha slide just down from Deadpool and Batman and Wonder Woman? That's every Saturday night over on the Experience Twitch channel. Join Taji Beats for the EXP Dance Party, exclusively on Twitch, twitch.tv/the_EXP. Programming on the EXP is made possible by viewers like you, or your local comic shop, or that Kickstarter you backed, or the publisher you like, or comic industry professionals who want to share a message with the world. Really, anyone who wants to advertise with us can. If you're interested in seeing a product you know and love, or are creating, or are publishing, or are involved with, advertised here on The Experience, and having your message shared with our viewers, please reach out by scanning the QR code below or visiting our website and using the contact form. Go follow The Experience on TikTok at @the_EXP1. Or scan the QR code on the screen. Our TikTok is like everywhere else we are, except you only have to deal with us for a minute. Seems like a win-win to me.
Welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. We were just talking about the new season of Loki. Triple B says he hasn't had a chance to watch it yet. I'm with you on the fact that I'm glad it's coming out once a week and not all at once, because I still think that's a better way to watch most of these shows. What I like to do is watch them weekly when they come out, and then later on go back and binge it. Because when you binge it, it reinforces everything, and you pick up a lot of extra stuff. But there's cliffhangers and stuff from week to week, and it gives you that week to let it all soak in, to really kind of, what I'm talking today about Loki, I wouldn't have been able to say on Friday, because I had the weekend to really take it in and to think about, like I said, the parallels to Wes Anderson, the some of the Easter eggs and stuff, some of the things that they're trying to do, because I had time to let it sink in. And I think that's the best way for TV shows, because they're written for that. When you write for binge, you're just basically writing a giant movie that people are going to take in one turn. With these, you get that time in between to really resonate on, and to really look into what's happening. Maybe you do a little research. Maybe you Google something, But I think it adds to it, so that when you come back the next week, you have some ideas. Maybe this is where it's going to go. Maybe it's going to go that way. And then all of a sudden you start watching, and you're like, oh, it is going that way. Or, oh, did I get that wrong? So I like weekly releases on shows like this, like Loki. Some other ones are fine to binge. I think Falcon the Winter Soldier would have been fine to binge, because it was more of a straightforward movie split over 6 episodes. But ones like this that I think are really giving you stuff to think about and to pay attention to are more fun when you really give it the time. So, all right, guys, we're going to wrap that up there. I'm going to try to catch up on Gen V, and we'll talk about that at some point this week, hopefully. I'm kind of curious. There's I don't know if I'll have time to get to it, but James Gunn posted a picture of all the Superman comics that he put up on the wall in the office for Superman Legacy. And I think it would be interesting to take a deep dive into what those books are. So those are some story ideas I have that we might get to, but we'll have to see how it all plays out this week. Thank you for tuning in. Remember, at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, will be Minute to Skim It with Miss Jen, Kyle, and Jay. And then later tonight is Mint Hunter. So stick around for that. The boys show how to properly subvert expectations. That is true. And Garth Ennis, if you haven't seen the announcement, is going to be writing a James Bond book for Dynamite. Garth Ennis, of course, the boys writer. I want to see what he's going to do with James Bond. So. All right, guys, we're wrapping it up. Thank you again. Have a great day. We'll see you all tomorrow. Good night.
Join the party. Head over to our link tree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.